The weight of injustice bore down on Mayor Williams, crushing any hint of joy from her first victory. The evening news was filled with reports of her brother's arrest, the incident downplayed yet still inflammatory. It was all anyone could talk about. At the precinct, Jamal sat hunched on a metal chair in the interrogation room, his head throbbing from an accidental elbow to the head during the perp walk. He ran his thumb over the cool surface of the table, willing the room to fade away. Around him, the fluorescent light hummed a harsh tune. The clock on the wall ticked with cruel precision. He felt betrayed by the very city he'd been trying to honor. He remembered his parents, their faces etched with worry. His father, a soft-spoken giant who worked double shifts to keep a roof over their heads. His mother, a woman whose prayers could move mountains. And then there was Maya, his big sister, his hero. A picture of her smiling face adorned his bedroom wall. She had been a beacon, showing him that even in the toughest neighborhoods, dreams could take flight. Jamal wanted to make her proud. He wanted to break the cycle of disappointment and despair that plagued so many in his community. He wanted to be an engineer. But now, looking around the cold, hostile room, his dreams seemed as fragile as glass. Suddenly, the door swung open, bringing with it a blast of hallway chatter. In walked a tall, imposing woman. Her presence was like a lighthouse cutting through the fog of Jamal's despair. It was Mayor Williams. She moved with a quiet confidence, her eyes filled with a fierce determination. "Jamal," she said softly, her voice a balm to his frayed nerves. "Hi, Miss Williams. Do you know why you're here?" I don't. "Ma'am, I just went to the gas station to get Gatorade. That's what they told me. I'm your aunt, by the way." "Jamal, this is the last time you call me ma'am. Call me Aunt Maya." She sat down opposite him, her gaze unwavering. "Listen to me, Jamal. You did nothing wrong, but those cops, they don't know that. They try and pin something on you, because they want to believe that you a problem. That's their story, but it's not your story, you understand?" He nodded, unable to speak. The injustice of it all burned inside him. "So what do I do?" "You let me handle this. Just promise me you won't go anywhere. You won't say anything. Just stay right there until I come back. Okay, Aunt Maya." He watched her leave, her resolute figure disappearing into the hall. His gaze fell on the table, the same table that had held his dreams and now threatened to crush them. He couldn't believe this was happening. The police chief's office was a study in power and authority. Leather chairs, wood paneling, a desk that seemed to stretch on forever. Henderson sat behind the desk, his expression impassive, a mask that gave nothing away. Mayor Williams stood before him, her chin lifted in defiance. "Chief, I want to know how this happened. How did my brother get pinned for possession with intent to sell when he doesn't even use?" "Mayor, we have the bottle. We found it in the vicinity. Our officers reported seeing it fall from the car. Do you deny that? We have video footage. There are witnesses. And if you think I'm lying, you can check with the security guard at the gas station." Williams stared at him, her eyes boring into his soul. Why would anyone lie? Because, Mayor, sometimes people look guilty when they are. Sometimes appearances are deceiving. Your brother was found with a suspicious bottle in close proximity to a known drug dealer. What else do you expect the officers to do? He gestured to the bottle on the desk. Williams crossed the room and picked it up. She examined it closely, as though trying to discern its thoughts. "A bottle," she said quietly. "It's just a bottle. People can carry bottles. Is that a crime?" She turned back to the chief, her voice hardening. "You want to talk about appearances, Chief? Here's an appearance for you." My brother was set up. She placed the bottle on the desk and straightened her jacket. "How long were you planning to keep him in custody?" "Until we could charge him, Mayor. That's standard procedure." "And then what? You would drag him through the courts." "My brother, who has never been arrested, ever, who has a job, a house, and a bright future ahead of him, you would have ruined him. We only acted based on the evidence we had. If there's anything you want to discuss, it will have to be after the charges are filed." Williams turned away, her shoulders squared, her jaw set. She had walked into the lion's den and she was now ready to fight. The courtroom was packed with an anxious crowd. Every seat was taken. Cameras flashed, capturing the drama unfolding before them. It was a battleground of law and justice. The prosecutor spoke first, his words a calculated assault on Jamal's reputation. He pointed to the bottle, a mere inanimate object elevated to a symbol of guilt. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this bottle holds the key to this case. It's not just a container, it's a gateway to a world of drugs and dealing." He paused for dramatic effect. The defendant, Jamal Williams, had this bottle. He possessed it. He intended to sell the contents. We have the bottle, we have the evidence, and we have the testimony. The prosecutor shifted his gaze to the jury. "Look at the facts. Look at the evidence. Find the defendant guilty beyond a reasonable doubt." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Williams' lawyer rose. His demeanor was calm, his voice a soothing balm to the rising tension. "Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the prosecution has painted a picture of guilt, but what they haven't done is prove it. We are not here to decide whether Jamal is perfect or whether he might make mistakes. We are here to decide whether he committed this crime." He glanced at the bottle on the table. "This bottle has become the star witness. But what does it really tell us? Nothing. It tells us nothing." He looked directly at the jury. "There's reasonable doubt in this case, and reasonable doubt means not only that you must have a doubt in your mind, but that the doubt must be reasonable. The evidence is not sufficient to produce that kind of doubt. Therefore, you must find him not guilty." The tension in the courtroom was palpable. Everyone leaned forward, hanging on to every word. Who would prevail, the prosecution or the defense? The jury filed out to deliberate. Their faces were solemn, etched with the gravity of their task. The fate of a young man hung in the balance. When they returned, the atmosphere had changed. The weight of their decision pressed down on the room. The jury's foreman stood, his voice echoing in the silence. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Jamal Williams, not guilty." A collective gasp filled the courtroom. Cheers erupted from the crowd. Jamal's face broke into a radiant smile. Relief, joy, gratitude washed over him in waves. He had been vindicated. Outside the courthouse, jubilant crowds awaited the Williams family. Chants of not guilty, reverberated through the air. Camera flashes popped, capturing the triumphant moment. For Jamal, it was a taste of freedom, a victory not just for him, but for everyone who believed in him. He knew he had a long road ahead, one filled with challenges and prejudice. But today was a celebration. Today, he was innocent. and that was all that mattered. Standing amidst the crowd, Mayor Williams felt a surge of pride. Her brother was innocent, and the truth had prevailed, but she knew that this was just one battle in a larger war. The fight for justice, equality, and fairness was far from over. She looked at Jamal, his face shining with happiness, and vowed to continue the fight, not just for him, but for everyone who had ever been wrongly accused. Hi guys, I'm here. And today we have another story written by one of our writers. This is the third story they've written for us, and I couldn't wait to hear what you guys think of it. Before we jump into it, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe and share this story so others can enjoy it. Also, if you haven't yet, check out our page because we have some new merch that we are super excited about. Let's get into the story. It was a long silence on the other end of the line. Mayor Williams, I wasn't aware. Now you are. I want a full briefing on my desk by morning. No shortcuts. Every detail. Officer's name, the report, the alleged evidence, everything. Her voice was low and steady, laced with an authority Henderson had never heard before. When the first light of dawn touched the horizon, Chief Henderson arrived at the precinct, his mind racing. Sleep was a distant memory, replaced by the weight of the mayor's demand. He'd worked countless cases, interrogated suspects, and even broken up gangs, but never had the stakes been so high. A single mistake could cost him his career, his reputation, maybe even his safety. As he walked through the familiar corridors, Henderson reached for the switch to turn on his office light. But instead of the comforting hum of electricity, there was an ominous click. The lights were out. In the flickering glow of his phone, he saw a note taped to his computer. Gone for now. Don't look for me. His gut clenched. Was this a joke? A prank by a disgruntled officer? Then he noticed the second note, tacked onto his badge on the wall. It read, "Begin at midnight," followed by the same cryptic signature. Henderson knew this wasn't a game. Someone had broken into his office. Someone was sending him a message. He quickly got to work, poring over Miller's report. The case file was thin, the details sketchy. The alleged transaction was vague, the evidence lacking. Something wasn't right, but Henderson had never questioned Miller's judgment. But now doubt gnawed at him. He reviewed the crime scene photos again. The gas station, usually bustling at this time of night, was strangely empty. The surveillance footage was missing. Henderson felt a chill. Had Miller tampered with the evidence? What else had he concealed? Just then, his phone buzzed. It was the forensics team. They had found something in the lab. The substance Miller had reported was neither cocaine nor crack. It was a mixture of baking soda and sugar. Betrayed by his city, betrayed by the justice system he had dedicated his life to. Rage boiled inside him. The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Henderson called in backup, brought in a fresh set of eyes to review the case. As the clock ticked, the picture became clearer. Miller had planted the evidence, fabricated the report. But why? What had driven a respected officer to such a drastic act? Then it hit him. He remembered a complaint filed months ago, a young mayor defending her brother, a troubled teen with a history of petty offenses. Could this be the mayor's payback? The thought sent a shiver down his spine. As the sun dipped below the skyline, casting long shadows across the city, Henderson knew what he had to do. He needed proof. He needed to expose Miller's deception, and clear Jamal's name. But how? The answer came unexpectedly from an unlikely source, the mayor herself. At 7:32 p.m., Henderson's phone rang. It was the mayor, her voice tight with barely restrained urgency. "Chief, I need you to send me every piece of evidence in the Williams case, everything." Henderson felt a surge of hope. Could the mayor be playing him? Was this part of her plan? He had to take the chance. He ordered his team to send over every document, photo, video, even the lab analysis. An hour later, his phone buzzed again. "Are you almost done, Chief?" "Almost. I just need the surveillance tape from the gas station. I already sent it to you." Henderson frowned. He hadn't received any video footage. Was this a trick? "I haven't received anything." "Check your emails, Chief. I sent them all myself." Henderson quickly scanned his inbox, and there it was, an attachment labeled gas station footage. He clicked on it, and a folder full of videos appeared. As Henderson watched, he felt his blood run cold. Miller had arrived at the scene after the supposed drug deal. He had found the dropped pill bottle without a struggle. He had arrested Jamal, a teenager who had only been trying to help his sister. Rage, hot and heavy, filled Henderson. Miller had lied, cheated, framed an innocent person. How could he have been so blind? But the mayor had been right. She wanted the raw data, not a polished report. She wanted him to see with his own eyes. With his own eyes, he had seen Miller's deception. When the first rays of sunlight pierced through the darkness, Henderson was ready. He had gathered his evidence, pieced together the truth. He called the mayor back. "I have everything you asked for on my desk. Every detail, the whole truth," he said, his voice heavy with the weight of the night. The mayor wasted no time. She moved swiftly and decisively. She had the power to shake the city to its core, and she used it with precision. First, she had Miller suspended without pay. Next, she launched a full investigation, bringing in outside auditors to scour through his record. She personally visited Jamal, offering her support and ensuring he understood his rights. Meanwhile, the media, sensing a brewing scandal, started circling like sharks. Rumors spread like wildfire. The mayor's office released a statement, but refused to elaborate. Maya knew that transparency was key. She didn't want to be seen as hiding anything. So she played her cards close to her chest, letting her actions speak for her. As the days turned into weeks, the pressure mounted. Protests erupted, demanding justice for Jamal. The mayor remained steadfast. She knew the truth, and she was willing to fight tooth and nail to protect it. Then, just as suddenly as it began, it ended. The investigation concluded. Miller was charged, not just with misconduct, but with perjury and framing. The mayor had taken a stand and won, not just for Jamal, but for every citizen who had ever doubted their justice system. But the victory was bittersweet. The damage was done. Jamal's life had been uprooted. His future, once bright with potential, was now marred by accusations he couldn't have shaken even if he had been convicted. He couldn't escape the whispers, the doubts, the stigma of being labeled a drug dealer. Still, the mayor pressed forward. She knew that true leadership wasn't about avoiding the hard decisions, but about facing them head-on, even when the road ahead was uncertain. She didn't just want justice for Jamal. She wanted accountability. She pushed for reforms, for better training, for stricter oversight. She turned a tragedy into a catalyst for change. In the quiet moments, though, when the press had gone home, and the protesters had dispersed, she wondered about Jamal. How would he rebuild his life? Would he ever forgive her for dragging him into the spotlight? Would the city ever let him forget? These questions echoed in her heart, a constant reminder of the heavy burden of her role. As the weeks turned into months, the city began to heal. Miller's trial was a media circus, exposing his lies and deceit for all to see. He was ultimately convicted and sentenced, not enough to satisfy the public's thirst for justice, but it was a start. Jamal slowly got his life back on track. He graduated, attended college, and eventually became a social worker, helping other kids navigate the pitfalls that had ensnared him. The mayor watched him grow, a quiet pride swelling in her chest. She had protected him, but he had been the one to rise above his circumstances. Yet, as the years rolled by, the memory of that night lingered like a half-forgotten dream. People moved on, the city thrived, and the mayor kept going, tackling new challenges, making new memories. But sometimes, in the quiet solitude of her office or the peaceful evenings at home, she would remember the boy in the hoodie, the worn-out Impala, and the long shadow of injustice. These reminders were not just scars, they were badges of courage, testaments to the battles fought and won. For in that dark hour, she had stared into the abyss of corruption and emerged stronger on the other side. Miller hated mornings. For him, they were a constant reminder of what he'd lost, what he'd given up. In the past, the early hours were when he got his best work done, a time when the streets were empty and the calls were low. He used to find a certain beauty in the solitude. Not anymore. Now, mornings brought back memories of that fateful night, a haunting déjà vu that made each sunrise feel like a fresh wave of despair. He sat staring at the peeling paint on his front door, a chipped blue that used to be a cheerful color. Like everything else here, it had seen better days. His house, once a source of pride, was now a prison, each room lined with ghosts of laughter and memories that meant nothing now. His wife had left him shortly after he lost his job, taking the kids with her. All he had now was this house, filled with echoes of a life that no longer existed. The morning paper lay on the floor, its headline a mocking stare. He'd read it 3 times already, committing the words to memory as if they'd become his new address. Mayor's brother, framed by racist cop. Below his face swam in black and white, the picture taken from a surveillance camera outside the precinct. They all knew him now. The same man, the same hateful words that had cost him everything. A sudden noise startled him. Who was out this early? He peered cautiously through the blinds. Across the street, a familiar figure stood watering her garden. It was his neighbor, Mrs. Hernandez. She paused, catching sight of him at the window. She smiled, a warm, friendly gesture that stabbed at his guilt. She didn't know what he was capable of, what he'd done. He couldn't bear the thought of her children, his neighbors, being so close to him without knowing. Days blurred into weeks. Miller stayed indoors, emerging only at night when the town slept. Shame kept him awake, keeping him company in the darkness. Food became a luxury he couldn't afford. He couldn't bring himself to buy groceries, so hunger gnawed at his insides, reminding him of his fall. One day, he heard voices outside. Men's voices, urgent and hushed. He peeked through the blinds again and saw 2 men talking to Mrs. Hernandez. Their dark suits and somber expressions told him all he needed to know. Process servers, they were there for him. He watched them walk up his path, each step echoing the impending doom. He was about to be served. When the door opened, he felt a surge of defiance. Why should he let them win? He wasn't giving up without a fight. "Mr. Miller," one of the men began, extending a thick envelope. I don't know what you're talking about," Miller said, his voice raspy from disuse. "I'm here about the lawsuit regarding the incident involving Jamal Walker," the man continued, unfazed. "Jamal Walker," Miller repeated, the name a curse on his lips. "There's no lawsuit," he insisted, hoping they'd leave. "He didn't have money for lawyers, didn't have money for anything." "We'll take that as a denial," the other man said, pulling out a notebook. "So if you change your mind, you know where to find us." With that, they turned and left, their footsteps heavy with his shame. His hands trembled as he broke the seal on the envelope. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He recognized the lawyer's name from the news. One of the best in the city. If the paper meant anything, and it did, he was in trouble. He crumpled it, throwing it across the room. So what could they do to him? Strip him of his dignity. That was already gone. He looked around the empty house, the silent halls staring back at him. He was already ruined. Nothing more could be done. Later that day, Miller decided he couldn't stay there, not while the sun was up. He walked out into the harsh glare, shielding his eyes. The street was busy with life, laughter, and cars, the sounds of normalcy that grated on him. He hurried to the corner, pulling his jacket tight, burying his face in its folds. Suddenly, a voice cut through the din. "David, is that you?" He froze. Was he that transparent? Did everyone know it was him? Slowly, he raised his head. It was Maya. She stood on the other side of the street, her eyes searching his. Her face was an open book, the surprise, the accusation, the disappointment. She crossed the street, drawing closer. Each step she took pulled him further into himself, making him smaller. "How could you?" he whispered, the question catching in his throat. "How could I what?" she asked, stopping in front of him. He looked away, unable to meet her gaze. "Do you really have no shame, no remorse?" she continued, her voice shaking with barely suppressed rage. He flinched. She was right. He did have remorse. Too much. It was eating him alive. "Why didn't you fight me?" she demanded. "Why didn't you call me? I could have helped you." "Help me," he echoed, surprised by the bitterness in his own voice. "You wouldn't have helped me. You never did. You were always too good, too perfect. While I was left holding the bag." "That's not true," she protested, reaching out to touch his arm. He flinched away from her, recoiling as if she'd struck him. "Don't you dare touch me," he snapped. She withdrew her hand, her shoulders slumping slightly. "You don't understand, David. You weren't always like this. You were kind, compassionate. Then the badge came along and it changed you." He stared at her, his eyes blazing with anger. "You don't know me. You haven't known me for years. I'm not the boy you remember. I never was. What happened to you, David? What happened to my brother?" she whispered, her voice cracking. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and for the first time in a long time, he saw her. Not just the badge or the title, but Maya, the sister he once loved. There was sadness in her eyes, a deep, bottomless sadness that mirrored his own. He wanted to reach out and touch her, to tell her he was sorry, but he couldn't. He had caused this, and only he could fix it. he had broken her, and only he could make her whole again. He knew then that the road to redemption lay before him, a path he'd have to walk alone. The damage he'd done couldn't be undone. But maybe, just maybe, he could start to make things right.